All right, welcome to another episode of the Science and Spirituality Podcast. Um, we're your hosts, Chris and Kevin, as you know. So, this episode, we wanted to touch on a topic that me and Kevin have actually been discussing over the last week or so. We feel like is really important for all of our listeners about how negative thinking isn't always a bad thing. And I think it's important to discuss that because if you're involved in any personal development work or any kind of work to better yourself, there's a lot of talk in the community about negative thinking and about positive thinking. And at least from my perspective, just from what I've been reading and what I've been looking at, a lot of people seem to have a very negative opinion of negative thinking. But if you look at negative thinking as a call for awareness, like the negative thinking is shining a light on your patterns that you need to change. So if you are thinking negatively, but then you just completely ignore the negative thinking and just immediately try to think positive thoughts, you're ignoring the pattern of why the negative thoughts came there in the first place. And so by really shining light on those negative thoughts and asking yourself why they're there, it really gives you a window into how your brain is working and how your patterns are working and your patterns of thinking. So Kev, I know this week we've been talking about this, and you've been saying that you've been working with your clients on this. So if you want to provide some insight into what you've been telling them or what you've been seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. So you put it well that it's like, that's really interesting. I never thought of it that way. People have a negative view about negative thinking. Um, and the way I describe it, and this is what I share with my clients, that um, in order to change any pattern, any negative or limiting belief, then the only way to change it is in the present moment when it's coming up. Like, you could say all the positive affirmations and visualize your dream and meditate and do all the positive aspects of changing your life, which is necessary. But you cannot change a pattern, a subconscious pattern, until it comes up. Like, you would do the groundwork to start to shift it by having the more positive and life-giving and supportive beliefs and thoughts, but it must come up. Like, the negativity, the limiting beliefs must come up to be released and repatterned. Otherwise, they're just going to stay subconscious. So
Mm-hmm.
when negative thinking comes up, like you said, it's a call for awareness. It's when that's up, then that's actually the perfect time. It's actually good that stuff is coming up, because that means you're on your growing edge.
Mm.
Like, if you imagine that you're like everything, like all your results, everything you experience right now in your life is in like a circle. Imagine that the circumference of that is, I don't know, it's actually a metric for a
Pi
circumference.
r squared.
Yeah. Oh my God. I'm not even going to go there. This is not a math podcast. So it is science, but I'm not going there. Just imagine a small circle. That's like your current results. Then the dream, the goal, the expanded life that you want is an expanded version of that circle. So it's further outside of that. Now, when you take steps like meditating, visualizing, positive thinking, affirmations, all of that starts to bring you to the edge and starts to expand that circle. But at the edge, it's uncomfortable. And when it's
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, then negative thinking comes up, or the old patterns rise up most people think like, oh, they're coming up to, they're trying to it's trying to stop me, or it's like my old thinking, I'd come back
Mm-hmm.
again. It's like, here we go again. But that's actually the perfect time and the only time you can really repattern it is
Yeah.
in those moments.
Yeah. No, and I think I think a lot of people think that it's not working when they continually have negative thoughts.
Yeah.
And I think that it like demonizes you. It like
Mhm.
it makes you feel worse about yourself. 'Cause it's like, oh man, like I'm reading all these books and like I'm trying to be positive, but these negative thoughts keep coming up, and then you're like, shit, maybe I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah.
And then I feel like if you have that perspective on it, it slows your progress because you feel like you're failing, or you feel like there's something inherently flawed with you. But you having those negative thoughts, like you said, that's the work. That's the perfect time to be able to reprogram and repattern it. And
Hmm.
now, like, if I loved your circle analogy, because you were saying as you get to the edge of the circle, those negative thoughts come up. And what we need to realize as humans is that when we're reaching the edge of the circle of what we know and we're trying to expand past that circle, our nervous system is going to send a signal to say stop, because your nervous system is trying to protect you. You have certain survival patterns, keeping you safe in a little ball of, where you are in your life right now. And now when I say the word safe, I don't necessarily mean like you're in a happy place. You just feel safe where you are. So
because you
you,
know it.
so
It's
exactly,
normal.
because it's
It's normal.
familiar to you.
Yes.
And so our nervous system, our brains will create all of these negative like stories and these things that we tell ourselves to keep us stuck. And again, if you don't realize what's happening, you can think that you're like self-sabotaging yourself, but really it's like your nervous system's doing its job. But in that instance, if you want to move past that, you have to realize that you're having negative thinking because you're a fully functioning, like, perfect human. But in order to get past that, you need to recognize that and then be able to repattern those thoughts, or at least try to start to figure out where those negative thoughts are coming from. And so you can be better equipped to deal with them next time they come up.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's so important to have support, have
Mm,
someone help you or just shine the light of truth. Because, and like, I mean, just a couple weeks ago, I got back from vacation and I had negative thinking come up, and it was like a week straight. And I was like, what the hell is going on? And I reached out for support. I mean, to people that care about me, and also people that are aware of these kind of things. So I got the perspective that I needed, to realize like, oh shit, this is negative thinking. And I've been like putting myself down and beating myself up for having those negative thoughts. But
mm,
what the truth was, it was actually I was on the edge of my comfort zone in terms of how much happiness and love that I was experiencing, because I just took 2 weeks off on vacation in
yeah.
Swiss with my girlfriend, and grew so much closer. So it was just like the edge of that, or it's also called an upper limit. There's a great book by a man named Gay Hendricks, and the book is The Big Leap, and it's all about that, the upper limit, and how to shift that. Just a different name for a similar experience that we all have, you know, and what we're talking about here of just the negative thinking coming up, like that's normal.
Yeah. So I mean, just to like hone in on the key points from this podcast, when you have negative thoughts, you're not flawed for having them. So just like take that as it is, because so many people, I don't know, man, I just feel like so many people sabotage their progress because they feel like they're doing something wrong. But
Hmm.
no, you have negative thinking, it means that your nervous system is functioning the way that it's supposed to function. But instead of getting down on yourself for thinking negatively and trying to immediately switch to something positive, or to distract yourself with whatever coping mechanisms you have, whether it's like going to work out or whether it's watching shows or whatever you do to cope, sit with the negative thought for a little while and ask yourself why you're having it. Like what do you think this negative thought is trying to tell you? Is it trying to keep you safe? Is it trying to bring up an old pattern, maybe from your childhood or from like the last few years or the last few months, about the way you've been living? Like sit with it for a little while, like take out a journal, write down what you think the negative thought is coming from, and then what story you're telling yourself about these thoughts that are keeping you stuck. And then once you have it out on paper, then maybe some things will start to click for you. And then you can start to like repattern them, or at least like realize why you're having them. And I think it kind of builds a better relationship between you and yourself, because then the next time negative thoughts come up, you don't have to demonize yourself for having them. You can actually approach it with some compassion and try to get to the root of why you're having them in the first place.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. And then the flip side to that too, like with this podcast and what we're sharing here, it's not to say that you don't like install or input those positive thoughts. It's not to say never do that. Like it's wrong to do that. It's just that and this is honestly like, I think it depends on the person and what is coming up, is how much time you need to sit with those negative thoughts and really discover what it is. Because there will be a point in time where you feel like, all right, it's time, like I'm ready to change this. Like, so we're not saying like, yeah, spend a month with it, like you really need that
Hmm.
time. Like
Hmm.
no, like you have the time that you need, like you take out as long as you need. Sometimes it's literally a minute, but sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's a day, sometimes it's more, who knows. But it's your experience, so you get to work through that as needed. And then when you feel ready, when you feel like, all right, I got an understanding of why these negative thoughts are coming up, I'm learning the lesson, and then this is like me shifting to a positive thought is not suppression, then you change, then you shift, and bring to mind what kind of result would you love? What kind of thinking would support that result that you want moving forward? And then just start to repeat that, because our thoughts, our beliefs are only thoughts that are repeated over and over and over.
Yeah. Do you have like an example of like a client that you're working with, like obviously without giving names, and like how they worked through this process, or like what they're currently dealing with now?
Yes. Let me give you an example. So one of my clients is working on a business, and I will say they instead of she or he, and they have never really done that before. They're talented at what they do, but when they think about, okay, taking that next step, the fear is, I don't know what I'm doing. I've never done this before. What if I fail? I'm going to be investing this time and money, and maybe it's not going to work out. So they're very logical, but it's fear. It's fear disguised as practicality. And so instead of, because like in the past, and what she would do is like, oh, this is bad because they, I already said she. All right, it's the cat's out of the bag. Whatever. In the past, they'd studied a lot of personal development and self-help and everything, and yet they still were like, oh, like I shouldn't be thinking this. Like I should be like really confident and positive. But once they were acknowledging, like, okay, a part of it is it's just facts. Like, yes, I've never started a business before, never really done this, but then actually looking at the facts that she was talented and has sold some of her products, like there was the fear was completely baseless. And so she spent some time with it and really realized that it actually that fear was a really deep-seated, rooted like belief system that she grew up with, and that she got from her family and her parents, that you're not talented, or like you're not like you're like what you do is not valuable. It's like you shouldn't, like she was one of grew up where like women or girls were not meant to do their own thing or like be smart or go to college or anything like that. So like she was blocking herself because of the old beliefs. So like because she acknowledged like, oh wow, yeah, like this is negative thinking, like even though there's facts, but what's the deeper meaning? She uncovered that, and once she realized that, it's like, yeah, that's BS. I'm gonna move forward because I'm a badass.
Yeah.
So it gives you confidence with it too.
Yeah, it's a perfect example too, because like the initial fear she was feeling was her nervous system just trying to protect her. Like that's all it was.
Yeah.
And like you said, she sat with it. She realized it was an irrational fear because she wasn't actually in mortal danger. And then you put the fear behind you and you start to act with courage because you have an understanding of why those negative thoughts or why those fear thoughts were there in the first place. So now it's a perfect example of what we're talking about here on this podcast. So I'm going to reiterate it again, like people, just when you have negative thoughts, sit with them, write them down, try to figure out, what they're coming from, and realize that you're not flawed for having them. And we're humans. We can't think positively 100% of the time. And if we did think positively 100% of the time, there would be no like thing pointing us in the direction of what we need to change in order to grow. I think that's really important too. So
we'd stay stuck.
Yeah. All right. Do you have anything else to add?
No, that's pretty much it. Just apply this. I beg of you, apply it. That's the thing. Like with personal development podcasts, YouTube videos, Instagram, like all the positivity in the world can't change you unless you actually apply it and actually work with it. That's the challenge. We could provide all the information we have, but unless you actually do it, then it's not going to really change. So it's my final say.
Sweet. I'm going to leave it at that.
Sounds good. All right. Talk to you all soon. And that's it for today. So thanks for tuning in, and we really hope you enjoyed listening to this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. So any questions, any comments, just connect with us on Instagram. You could always DM us at Kevin Francis Carton
and at Chris J. Carton. And also, if you feel guided to, the one thing we do ask is for you to please rate the podcast and leave us a review. This way we can reach more people and impact more lives with this amazing information. With that, we'll see you on the next episode.